Hello, welcome to Science Chomp. Today we're going to be looking at keywords that you have to know when we're talking about groundwater. So let's get right into it. The first word we have is groundwater. Now this, as the name suggests, is water underneath the ground which we can access to drink. The next word is surface water. So this is water that's on top of the surface of the ground, and we can see them as rivers, lakes, streams, ponds, that kind of thing. So this is surface water. Next we have infiltration. Now infiltration is a process by which rainwater becomes groundwater. So what happens is it rains down onto the ground, and there's tiny little holes and cracks in the ground called pores, which the rain percolates through, and then it basically fills up the groundwater. So that's infiltration. The next two sets of words, they're together really. We've got the saturated zone and the water table. So the saturated zone is a zone underneath the Earth's surface where all of the pores, so all of the gaps within the rock and all of that kind of stuff, is totally filled with water. Whenever you see the word saturated, it usually means it's filled usually with water, okay? And the upper boundary of that is called the water table, okay? Pores, porous, and porosity, I've connected those together because they're basically all to do with the same thing. So pores are little holes. So lots of rocks have little holes in, and you would call them porous rock. So basically rocks with holes in. So pores just means basically little holes. And porosity is the measure of the amount of holes that a rock might have, okay? And if it has lots of pores in it, you would call it a permeable rock. So permeability is the ability to allow water to go through something. The opposite of that is impermeable. So you've got things like clay and shale, and these are rocks that do not let water through. And what these can do is confine the water above it. So the water is going to sit on top and not go through it. So these are impermeable materials, impermeable rock. Now, other things which are impermeable are things like metal, marble, glass. These are all things which will prevent water to go through them. So that's impermeable. Next, we've got aquifer and aquiclude. So we'll start with aquifer. An aquifer is basically a rock that contains groundwater. And an aquiclude is an impermeable rock that can confine the groundwater. So what you'd have is you'd have an aquiclude at the bottom and an aquifer on top of it. So when the rainwater infiltrates the aquifer, it basically goes right down to the bottom, and when it hits the bottom, it doesn't go right through into the mantle of the earth. It doesn't do that because you're going to have a layer of impermeable rock called an aquiclude that basically prevents it going any further. Then we've got springs and wells. So a spring is when groundwater flows from an aquifer to the Earth's surface. Okay, so groundwater flows downhill, and what you'd have is a situation like this. Okay, so this is a hill, and this is a bit of ground where you can imagine this part is impermeable. So the water, what happens is it just flows down the hill. Once it hits the aquiclude, it can no longer go through it, so it just comes out onto the surface. So that would be a spring. It's a water flow that's from an aquifer onto the Earth's surface. So when water flows from an aquifer onto the Earth's surface. Okay? Then we've got wells, and wells are structures that access the aquifer so that you can get water out of it. Of course, when you're building a well, you have to make sure that it goes deeper than the water table. So the water table, remember, is the upper limit of the saturated zone. Okay? Well, they are all of the keywords. Pause it, rewind, play it again, share it with your friends. Basically, you gotta know all of these words. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.